Hi everyone, Jason here from spiritualbabies.net. You know the sort of stuff I usually do. It's kind of counter-missionary and Torah-based. I was approached by someone on Facebook interested in having a chat, and when I saw what he was about, especially given my background, I thought A, it was super interesting, B, it'd be a really kind of interesting conversation, and C, I wanted to learn more about where he was at. So I'm going to throw the microphone over to him now because I don't want to mess up any pronunciation. So, Yosef, can you introduce yourself? Give us your name, where you're at, what the name of your YouTube channel is, and then a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I am Yosef Edery, or just Yosef, and I'm from Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and my YouTube channel is Zog Yechi HaMelech. I've started it many years ago, and when I started off, it was all about teaching, explaining, advertising Moshiach, as I learned in the Hasidic schools that I went to for 7 years, and to continue the work of the Rebbe to spread goodness and kindness and the message of redemption, and of course the global message of the 7 laws of Noah as a foundation for world peace, obviously.
I'm going to jump in straight away because there are going to be some people that want to put two and two together and don't think that they can. But when you say the Rebbe you're, and the Mashiach, you put those both together, right? So your perspective is that the Rebbe was Mashiach.
Yeah, let me tell you my perspective and how it developed, and I'll tell you actually there's a current development in my perspective, if you might say. But let me give you the fundamental perspective and the perspective of all the Jewish people that believe in the Rebbe as Mashiach. The reason why we believe the Rebbe is Mashiach is because halachically the Rambam, Maimonides, is the authority. I'm sure you heard this 1,000 times about what a Jewish Messiah is all about. And in the 13th chapter, he explains that Messiah has to be, number one, from the house of David, meaning his great-great-great-great-grandfather from his father's side has to be King David. The Rebbe, what's it called, has his great-great-grandfather lineage going back all the way to the Maharal of Prague. And from the Maharal of Prague, it is known that the Maharal of Prague had his great-great-great-great-grandfather was King David, so that's secured. And then the second thing that Mashiach has to do, according to the Jewish law, is that he has to be a positive influence of the oral and written tradition that was passed down from Mount Sinai. And the Rebbe was such an influence, like the Moses in his time, or like the Mordechai in the time of Purim. He was the beacon of light in the generation for all spiritual matters. And of course there are many other sages and many other rabbis, but no one as powerful in the spiritual realm and in the message of the Bible like the Rebbe was. So that's what makes the Rebbe a candidate for Messiah according to the law. And when I stress law, I'm separating law from prophecy, because when the law is discussed, we're talking about, what actually happens on the ground in the real time, in the real world. Prophecy and interpretation and other things may change, as they say, but the Jewish law stands. And the reason why Maimonides is always brought up is because he's the only one who took all the 613 commandments and organized them and brought the biblical source for them, and he really conquered the entire Bible, and no one argues with him on these laws. And there were 3 great rabbis at that time that we make the Shulchan Aruch out of, and he's the only one who discussed these laws. And in such a case, the law is like him, halacha k'moisei, which means that in practical, simple English, if Messiah and who Messiah is going to be determined according to halacha by what the Rambam says. So that's the belief of the Chabad movement, and my belief growing up, and my belief currently.
You said that there is a little bit of change in your current perspective.
Yeah, the change that I'm referring to is basically that I think that the Chabad movement is pushing very hard the narrative of waiting for Messiah, but they're not pushing the narrative of what needs to be done. Meaning, we're back, the Rebbe basically came with this revolution of let's make some change in the world, and now we're back to just sitting and waiting for the Rebbe, kind of. And my change in perspective is that we should work on Minui Melech, which means crowning of a king, through 70 sages, otherwise known as the Sanhedrin. And of course, I saw some articles that, it's gonna, if the Jews do put a king together that actually builds the temple and they bring the Sanhedrin, then it's the Antichrist and things like, and things like that. I think that that's a little bit baseless, because you can't say someone's the Antichrist maybe you can. I don't know what the tradition is of the Christians or the Muslims, or like they call it the Dajjal. But I would assume that the Antichrist would be something like what's happening in Hollywood now, or Hillary Clinton, someone that does crimes and someone that does evil things. But the Rebbe, or a Jewish king that comes and is religious and is trying to bring peace to the world, I don't understand why they would call him an Antichrist. Anyway, my change in perspective is that the Chabad community should move towards, and the Jewish community as a whole, and the Noahide community should move towards collecting a Sanhedrin, giving them power, and learning as much as possible about how to crown a king that's just a regular king, just like Shaul was a king before King David. And he was the introduction kind of to King David. So too, we should crown a king and do as much as we can, and not just sit and wait for the revelation of the Rebbe, King Moshiach. Obviously, the king that we put together could be signed a contract that if Messiah is revealed and if the Rebbe is revealed, then he gives his kingdom over at that moment to the Rebbe, or something like that. But that we should look to see, and the reason why I think that we have to move forward is because for all those who really want to serve Hashem, whether Jew or not, we are now fulfilling in the realm of the commandments, Paz mitzvahs, which is 87 commandments. And if we have a king and a Sanhedrin, and those two elements give us the power to build the temple on the Temple Mount, which is something very feasible, finally now after the Holocaust and about 60 years of the Israeli government, even though they're not 100% religious and things, but there's a lot of Jews coming back to their roots now. And if we can get the Jewish king, the Sanhedrin, and the temple established, we will be able to fulfill 613 commandments, which will be the ultimate fulfillment of the Bible. And of course, the Sanhedrin will have enough time and resources to learn and go through all the details to figure out what the Jews need to do and what the rest of the world needs to do, and put it all together. And of course, the only reason I want to make a king is not because I'm looking to challenge democracy, communism, or anything else. I'm just trying to see what it says in the Bible. And the Bible, it does say, "Som tasim alecha melech," you should put upon yourself a king. So if we want to fulfill the Bible, the Old Testament, then I think that would be the right way to go. And I feel that in the Chabad movement, there's not a lot of fanfare about this. They're pretty much settled with waiting for the Rebbe, which is, I think, the opposite of what the Rebbe would have in mind.
I'm going to have to ask the questions that I know most of my viewers are going to be asking themselves right now. So I don't want this to look like I'm arguing or attacking,
Okay.
but there are some things that jump out. Growing up in the church, we were told that there was a certain individual that features in the New Testament, and that this was Jewish Messiah. And then, as an individual interested in studying, I learned that it's not the Messiah, and so I'm very interested in learning what Messiah is. So I go and look at lots of articles, and I read lots of books. and I formulate my own kind of checklist. I'm curious, how do you kind of work around, or maybe you don't, maybe you have perfectly good answers, the parts of the job description for Moshiach which the Rebbe didn't fulfill. Building the temple, it's not even about world peace. The way I look at it is
in gathering of the exiles and building the temple.
To have the Messianic age, you need to have an active Messiah, and it can't be a Messiah without it being the Messianic age. So if you've got an end to hunger and an end to violence, and animals not attacking animal, and the temple's being built, and everyone, Jew and Gentile, they all know God, brother doesn't have to teach brother, all of those collective parts of that period, or even the fact that it says that the prince will go to temple and he will give sin offerings for him and his offspring, and we know that there wasn't another Rebbe after him. How does all that come to, how do you work around those parts?
Okay, so you said a lot of things, and definitely valid points, and I just want to say like this, that number one, just like President Trump, before he was elected, no one expected him to start making changes before he was elected, even though I think that he was able to do some kind of change and was able to show that he can move and shake things around for the benefit of the American people. But in any case, there's the criteria of the candidacy, and that's a term that the Rambam uses, like kind of a legal term for candidate for Messiah, and that is Becheskas Mashiach. And to be Becheskas Mashiach, which means a candidate, you don't need to, let's say, if Trump promised to drain the swamp and to build a wall, people can't expect him to do that before he was elected, right? He has to get in. So the qualifications for Messiah are different than what he does, and that has to be clear. In other words, Messiah is coming into a mess, and he's supposed to clean up the mess. So as far as Becheskas Mashiach, which means candidacy, that basically gives the okay for the people to get involved and accept upon themselves the king. Once they take upon themselves the king, he could actually fulfill the things that they want him to, or that they need him to, or that the Bible requires him to, that God wants. So Becheskas Mashiach is the first stage, and the second stage is Mashiach Vadai, which means for sure Mashiach. So the first stage, Becheskas, only requires, and this is Messiah, not a Jewish king, standard Jewish king, different laws, different situation. But a Messiah would mean son after son from the house of David, and has shown that he can teach the oral tradition and the written tradition to the Jewish people and to the world. So those two things are what make a Becheskas Mashiach. What does he need if, then the Rambam continues, if he gathered all the Jews and he built the temple, then he's for sure Mashiach Vadai. But that stage is more of what he needs to fulfill as he becomes king. Like we see also in the Jewish king standard, the standard Jewish king in the Bible, he's not allowed to have many wives, more than 18 wives, according to what the sages put together, and he's not allowed to have many horses. If he does those two things when he is already king, then God will bestow blessing on his kingdom, and he will merit to the rest of the, whatever the verses say over there. So there's a difference between the candidacy and the fulfillment. We have to also remember that a lot of people, unfortunately, are waiting for Messiah to fall out of the sky, and their spiritual life is very detached from the physical, and it's a problem. And the reason why it's a problem is because it's sort of like a place that they run away to when they want to see or think about making change, but the implications in the physical world are detached. Sometimes, it's a lot of today in the democracy, especially when we're talking here about Malchus, which is kingdom, which is the last of the 10 Sephiros. It's a very complicated thing, and obviously everyone has their own government and their own subliminal Stockholm syndrome from their government that they need to contend with before they even think of trying to create some kind of kingdom for God, and also obviously make sure that the delicate transition or the delicate process of what God wants in this world should not bring the exact opposite of God's will, just like the Muslim world unfortunately is fallen victim to, in the name of God, doing things that aren't godly at all, or history has enough of that. So when we're now in the 2017 looking forward to making God a kingdom, so of course my number one suggestion would be we have to really learn and know what we're talking about, because there's a million ways to do it wrong and there's only one way to do it right. And regarding what you said about the Messianic era, we are in the Messianic era. The Rebbe does bring that down, and the Talmud brings that down. It says, La'alter l'tshuva la'alter l'geula. The quicker we do repentance, the quicker we will have the redemption. And in the time of the Talmud already, they said that kolu kol hakitzin, which means all the end of days, the kates means by this year or by this day, Messiah should be able to reveal himself. So all the katesim, all the predictions of end of times are already done. The Rebbe predicted that we are in a Messianic era. The Rebbe said that we should open our eyes and we will be able to see that the redemption is here. And the Rebbe, for the last 5 years of his revealed life, from the year Memches to Nun Beis, which is about till 1991, the Rebbe invested a lot of time and a lot of his teachings to saying prophecy and telling us what's happening in the world and what will happen in the world and what we should be looking for, and it's definitely happening, whether it's the Rebbe prophesizing that the wars in the Arab kingdom will intensify more and more and more ever since the Gulf War, which it wasn't necessarily obvious at that time. It was the first Bush with the first Saddam Hussein situation, and the Rebbe said that there's going to be a continuation and it's just going to intensify, and that's from the signs of the redemption. The Rebbe doesn't say if it's a positive thing. Obviously it's never positive when people are getting killed and wars are happening, but the Rebbe said that, and that's what's going to be one of the signs of the redemptive process. Another thing the Rebbe said was that in the Gulf War no Jew will be hurt, and that Israel is the safest place in the world. And we saw 50 Scud missiles landing in Israel, and not one of them killed a Jew. So that was another miracle that happened. And so there's a lot of prophecy that the Rebbe said. There's a lot of things that came forth that are true. And the Rebbe does say that Messiah is here. If we only open our eyes, we can see the process. The Rebbe also mentioned the falling of communism as a sign of corruption falling. The Rebbe's aim and the Rebbe's general direction that the Rebbe wanted to point people at is, if you want to know if the redemption is in the process of unfolding, then just look to see if Tov, Tzedek, V'Yosher, goodness, righteousness, and straightforwardness is happening in the systems. If all corruption is starting to crumble, then you know that the redemption, the light of good, is starting to fill the world. And we're seeing it all the time and again. We see Hollywood's falling apart, the corruption in there and the things that are happening over there. We see that a lot of politicians that have been abusing their power and doing evil in the world are falling. So I do see the redemption process coming forward. Obviously it's not as fast and as miraculous and boom as we expected it maybe to be, but it's definitely happening. And also to bear in mind that the Maimonides also says don't expect open miracles in the first stage of the Messianic era. That means that there's the first stage, which is without miracles, and then there's the second stage, which is where you see the resurrection of the dead and many other things that are part of the second stage, when open miracles will become abundant. But we're now in the first stage of Yemai Mashiach, according to the Jewish sources that I checked.
So I'm going to have to push you on the return of the Rebbe, how that's going to work, and then after that we can talk about some other related things. We'll get away from the whole fulfillment side of things.
Okay, the return of the Rebbe is basically there's not enough details for us to really grab it, and as the Chabad community learned to understand the Rebbe was not about telling us exactly what's going to happen. He pretty much told us what's going to happen as far as what we need to know. Like military, that they know enough information in order to execute what they need to do. But they don't necessarily know every minute where the prime minister is, or when they're going to ever see him again, or if they're going to ever see him again. They don't know if their next mission is too dangerous or too, But with the Rebbe, it's like a loving father kind of. The Rebbe really showed compassion and everlasting patience for anyone that came to him, whether it was crazy people, literally, or whether it was very, very high-end politicians or all kinds of people, every kind of person in the world. The Rebbe showed an endless patience, understanding, and acceptance of everyone, no matter who, no matter what. And this love, which was not tied down to any reasons or circumstances, was something that the Hasidim yearned to try to emulate. The Rebbe, how is he going to come back? He's going to come back, according to what the Rebbe says, when we fulfill the last mission that he gives us, which is in the last sikha, the last discourse that the Rebbe gave, the last speech the Rebbe gave to all the shluchim, which is all the emissaries that they come in once a year to 770, and the Rebbe would give them a discourse, like a breakdown of what's going to happen and what's the next mission. And the mission statement that the Rebbe gave, the last one that we have, as of today, as of 2017, is: we finished the work of spreading Judaism. We finished the work of spreading Hasidic philosophy. Doesn't mean we stop. It means we finished the advertising campaign, and obviously we fulfill all those things. And now we're moving on to accepting and greeting the King Messiah, or in Hebrew, Kabbalat Pnei Moshiach Tzidkenu. Kabbalas Pnei Moshiach Tzidkenu. And that is the key. What does that mean? Accepting the King Messiah? That is a vast question that you can look for hints and resources within the Rebbe's work. But it's about accepting and greeting the King Messiah. That's what we need to do. So that's why I, like, for example, mentioned earlier, maybe crowning a king, because just take the Jewish people, we count from Passover to Shavuos, which is when the Jews got the Torah on Mount Sinai, 49 steps. We only count 49, not 50, because God counts the 50th step. Almost like Noah, when he built the ark, he built it for 100 and something years, and then God closed the door. In other words, God's the last one to do the last work, because you have to always remember that without God you can't do anything. And that's why we count to 49 but not 50. But the same thing is here. We have to know, how much did we do everything we can to bring Mashiach? Did we really turn over every rock, or is there something more that we can do? Are we just gonna rely on our Father of Heaven, lean on him so hard that he's gonna be like, yo, you're leaning on me too much, your elbow is stuck in my arm, or are we really giving it what we got? Did we really exploit all our resources that now it's really up to God, or are we still holding by 2 or 3 or 4 and we're just starting out to count? So that's like the way I see it, and that's like technically. So I think that, like a soldier, he's not supposed to rely on Air Force or air support unless he really needs it, and so on and so forth. So I think that we as human beings, we need to try our best. And if miracles occur, God bless, God bless the world. But we need to really focus on this world, and we really, really need to be grounded in our spirituality. And the reason for that is because we are here. We are here in this physical world. This is the world that God wants to make a better place. This is the world that God invested in, and this is the world that God wants to see us in. So,
I can hear the overriding message that you have, and and it appeals to me, and it makes sense. And you're right. Too many sit back, and it's not just people who might be waiting for the Rebbe. It's almost any religion that has that idea of someone who's going to come and fix everything. And they'll just
Absolutely.
wait, and they'll say, "Oh man, I wish I was in heaven already," because they don't think Earth's ever going to be worth it. I wish the Messiah was here because he'd fix everything. And you're like, well, you could go out and do something nice today. It wouldn't kill you. I mean, why are you praying that for your brother-in-law to have a better foot after his accident, when you could go around there and make him a cup of tea and maybe mow his lawn for him? It wouldn't break your back. Why are you praying for God to make that happen?
Absolutely.
And it's exactly the same with the concept of Messiah. People expect it to be a fixer, that someone's going to come down and click their fingers and everything's going to just work. But that's not, for me, that's not the world that was created, right? God made a functioning engine of a world, and he filled it with animals that have a perception of choice, and humans which have total free choice. Now, why anyone should believe that a Messiah is going to come and suddenly that free choice is erased and that we'll all be forced to be good is beyond me.
Even more so. Let's say someone's addicted to drinking alcohol, and last time he had too much money, he bought so much alcohol that he passed out and he was in a coma for a few days. So when God's going to come to the world, and let's say all the people that have a small bank account are going to say, "God, fill our bank account," he's going to be like, "That's not what's going to help you. If I thought it would help you, then I would do it a long time ago. You with too much money is an issue." So, I mean, it's not so much... what I'm trying to say is that there's no one fix for everything. The problems that we think are problems are not God's problems. And that's why the wars of God that Messiah is supposed to fight also are not the wars of mankind. When we talk about a war, it's about chopping people's heads off, killing people, or scaring them to death. That's not what God's wars are. God's wars are the wars of bringing humanity into the world, peace and prosperity, and those kind of things. Spreading truth and debunking lies. Those are the wars of God. So we have to know that there's a different playing field. What we think is right is not necessarily what the Creator intended for this world. And I just want to add to what you said. There's a cartoon, I think it's called The Blackwater Gospel, on YouTube, which has millions of views. And then there's a young man, I'm not sure what his name is, but he gives an explanation to that cartoon. And they touch on a very important topic in religion in general, that is that there's a lot of psychopaths or narcissists or people that are control freaks, in simple English, that use religion as a means of extortion of wealth, or a mental or physical, spiritual extortion, and they try to twist the people into slaves or into children. And as much as this argument is a very sounds like an atheist kind of argument, just trying to bash religion, I think that there's a lot of truth in it, and that a person has to be really careful when he's serving God to make sure that he's not doing it out of peer pressure and things. And that's another thing I wanted to mention, that it's all about free choice. The Bible says, "I will give you the good and the bad, the curse and the blessing, the life and the death, and you should choose life." Judaism is the first free choice platform, and from there the founding fathers were aware of this kind of stuff, and they put it into the Constitution somehow, and things like that. And as long as there's a free choice platform for all of humanity, whether it's men, women, children, Orthodox, non-Orthodox, then everything is going to be okay, and God rests in that situation, because God does not want a communist regime, a dictatorship, or any force. So even if there's a religious father or mother, and he's like, "Yo, my son, you have to come with me right now to pray, and if you're not going to come, you're going to burn in hell," and he's scaring the life out of him, then he's ruining his free choice. He's not giving him the independence, and then the person is not fulfilling his potential as a person. The angels, for example, according to Kabbalistic work, they can barely ever sin. And the reason they can barely ever sin is because they can see how God is creating them every moment. So they cannot sin. It's like if you had a plug that comes out of your foot and you need to charge yourself in order to have energy for the next day, and someone came with a scissor and he said, "I want to cut your wire so that you can't plug yourself into the wall." So the person would, pull out a gun and say, "If you try to touch my wire, I'm going to shoot you because this is the only way I can get energy. And if I need to have my energy. So the same thing as the angels, they see how God creates them and they cannot sin. They could sin, but it's very, very hard because they know that this is our source. They see how God creates them. We are down in this world, according to Kabbalah, that where we have free choice, and that's what God wanted. So when another human being infringes on another human being's free choice, I'm not talking about teaching and explaining and with love and passion, showing people the right way, being an advisor to the community is great. But when there's an infringement on the free choice of a person, or when a person is going to be punished by other people for what he's doing, then the concept of free choice, Judaism, and everything falls apart right there. So that's another important issue that we need to, address, I think.
So just before we sign off, because I think we've got a few minutes left, on Chabad.org, and I was having a look as I was researching for this call. There's a lot, obviously, about the Rebbe, but there isn't anything that explicitly says Rebbe's Moshiach. And when you look up Moshiach on Chabad, it gives you quite a good list of sources and resources and texts and ideas. So you are in a specific group amongst the bigger fields that holds faith in Rebbe as Mashiach. Would that be right?
Sort of, yes. And Chabad.org, they are very. It's like I don't just for a lack of a better example, there's the 20-80 rule, and then there's also. Sorry, the time. This is a very bad example, but it's also a good one. You understand what I'm saying? The Nazis had the Gestapo, and then they had the regular army. The Gestapo was a very small percentage compared to the regular army, but they did almost 50% of the work that the regular army did, and that's how I see the quote-unquote Moshiachistim group in Chabad and the quote-unquote anti-Moshiachistim group in Chabad. The Moshiachistim, their heart and soul lies with the Rebbe. They're very, very devoted, and sometimes they don't have their resources lined up properly. They're not level-headed enough to run businesses or intellectually, broad enough to make a business or make a structure out of their beliefs. But they're very faithful and they're very determined, and that's pretty much the Moshiachist group. Do they have their flaws? Yes. And then you have the other group, which is the quote-unquote anti-Moshiachist group, which are all about, take it easy, slowly, don't scare the world, give them the whole concept of Messiah by bite-sized pieces. But at the end of the day, they don't really invest too much in connecting the Rebbe to Mashiach, and the Moshiachistim, for one thing, they study the Rebbe's work, and they're very well versed in the Rebbe's work, especially in the later years. And I can, quote you, dates when the Rebbe said different discussions and tell you what the Rebbe said on those days. And the anti-Moshiachistim, they are not as well versed and in the later years, and they pretty much are like if I have a problem with the Moshiachistim not doing enough to bring Mashiach, as in going out of their way and coming up with new ideas like crowning a new king, so then I have even more of a question to those who are quote-unquote anti-Moshiachistim, why they're not even getting close to it with looking at the Rebbe status in this whole story. But again, everyone's, I think that, the diversity is just, it's like in a community or in Chabad is like the diversity in the world. Certain people, will be attracted to certain places, and certain people won't have such an appeal to other, and so on.
The way I look at something like that is like a cog in a machine, right? So cogs have teeth, and the teeth come out and the teeth go in. And if they didn't go both ways, then you wouldn't be able to get a grip and you wouldn't be able to drive the thing forward. So I think sometimes you need to have two opposing views to power things and keep them going in one direction.
Yeah, like when someone has a passion or drive, he goes to the Moshiachistim. When someone wants to hear that he's right and that everything is false, then he goes to the anti-Moshiachistim.
So before we go, because I think we're coming up to an hour, and that's going to be my limit,
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do on your website, what your videos around? I know you do other things on this subject, and you interview and you do things for Noahide groups. Can you?
Yes.
Why should someone go?
In...
Why should someone go to your channel and subscribe?
Well, my channel is Zog Yechi Hamelech, which means Zog is in Yiddish, which means "say long live the king," and it's taken from a quote from the Rebbe. In my channel, I have my Moshiach raps, which I put together once in a while. I just do it as a hobby. I made some raps about like Moshiach stuff, and it's a little bit like, wow, religious Jews making raps about Messiah. So that's one thing. And then another thing is, on a more serious note, I'm a friend in Ami My Nation and the Noah Center, which is a group of Hasidic philosophers, if you might say, which are friendly to the Hasidic Messianic community, in the Meshachist community, in the Chabad movement. And they really also have a passion to try to help the world, so I help them with their projects. We also have different discourses. I mean, it's really like from my childhood, or not my childhood, but it's like a really long transition, of how I got to where I got to. And obviously you can see how I build my channel, and I'm not one of those hipster perfectionist people that are going to like delete the videos that I think are unprofessional after I make something more professional. Just leave everything as is, and let people decide what they want to look at. So you really see the build up, and as my first videos are very general, and then I get more detailed, and now my just like the life of a person, it's more intellectually intense and less action and running around and playing around. So that's my channel. I speak a lot about Mashiach. I have guests, and I have Xuan Li, which is my Chinese friend, which came specially twice to Israel, and we went to the Temple Mount, and we did a few interviews, and we did a series, Friends of Peace, where we discuss all kinds of concepts of the East and West coming together in the world. And all in all, I'm all about bringing people together and really uniting the global community for peace and ethics and morals, and of course, promoting religion, the correct religion, and staying away from the control freaks and the psychopaths and the people that take advantage of the religion and manipulate the people in the religion. And I'm really about intellectual common sense, and all the things that we're fighting for.
Cool. All right, that's brilliant. All right. Thank you very much for joining me and coming to talk to me today and spending the last hour discussing this. I know that it might have come across kind of evasive. I'm asking some questions which I don't know. Maybe you don't have.
No, absolutely. No, Jason, I'll tell you what. I love these questions, and I love to address them because I know people want to hear, and I know people want to learn, and I'm sure that between all the people that are grinding their teeth in the beginning of this video saying, oh my god, there's something wrong, I hope that by now, with an hour worth of information, they can sit a little bit more relaxed and say, these Jewish people, they're into something, they're on their own role, and they have their own mission, and they're also very interested in helping everyone else and anyone that wants to be, learn more. And I hope that I really, just like a doctor is excited to see a patient that's sick that he never saw before, or because he that's what he does. He treats it. So too, like, I'm happy to hear these questions because, if it's on a lot of people's mind, then let's get it off and let's get on with some goodness and kindness.
Brilliant. All right. So there's going to be a link to Yosef's channel on your screen now, and if you don't have the capability to touch the screen, then there'll be one underneath as well. You can go over there and subscribe. Please make sure you do. If you've enjoyed this video and it's your first time here, hit the subscribe up here as well. If you have questions you'd like for me to go to Yosef with, if you want us to do a second video on anything, then let me know in the comments, or you can hit me up on Facebook. There'll also be a link underneath to Yosef on Facebook too, so you can hassle him with questions. Feel free to do that. And and we'll see you again very soon. Bye bye.